an original narrative, created especially for Shadows of Love. The rain fell like judgment on Eliza's shoulders as she pushed through the heavy oak door of obsidian. Her bruised wrist hidden beneath her sleeve, her phone battery, dying with each desperate text from the man she'd finally escaped. Inside, amber lights cast shadows that seemed to listen, and across the room, dark eyes found hers, Matteo Ricci, the man whose authority filled the space without a single word spoken. He didn't ask what happened as he signaled for a blanket, for food, for sanctuary. Instead, he turned her phone face down, with 2 deliberate fingers, when it lit up with threats. Between them, something dangerous formed in that moment. Not safety, but a recognition so precise it felt like the edge of a blade, promising both protection and the exquisite danger of trusting again. Eliza's lungs burned as she slipped into obsidian, the upscale bar rumored to be a front for something darker. She didn't care. What mattered was the heavy door closing behind her, sealing her away from the rain and from Daniel's rage. 12% battery, 3 missed calls, 8 texts, escalating from concern to threats. She scanned the room. Mahogany, leather, discretion. The kind of place that charged $20 for a whiskey and never asked questions that mattered. The clientele was sparse but deliberate. 2 men in tailored suits, discussing something in hushed tones, a woman alone at the bar, with perfect posture and eyes that never settled. "Can I help you?" The bartender's voice was professional, but his eyes flickered to her soaked appearance, the way she cradled her left wrist. "Just somewhere to sit, please." Her voice sounded foreign to her own ears. The bartender nodded toward a corner booth. "Of course. Would you like a menu?" Before she could answer, a presence shifted in the room. A man rose from a table near the back, tall, composed, with eyes that absorbed everything. He wore authority like a second skin, his suit impeccable, despite the late hour. "Marco," he said to the bartender, his voice quiet, but carrying an unmistakable command. "Bring a blanket, and the house pasta, no questions." The bartender, Marco, nodded once and disappeared. The man gestured to the booth. "Please." It wasn't quite a request, but neither was it a demand. Eliza hesitated, then moved toward the booth, her instincts warring between caution and the desperate need for shelter. "Matteo Ricci," he said as she sat. He didn't offer his hand, as if sensing her aversion to being touched. "Eliza," she replied, offering no surname. Her phone vibrated again on the table. Daniel's face flashed on the screen. Matteo reached across, his movements deliberate, and turned the phone face down with 2 fingers. "Eat first," he said as Marco returned with a blanket and a steaming plate. Decisions later. The pasta was simple: olive oil, garlic, a hint of chili. The blanket was soft against her shoulders. The silence between them was neither comfortable nor uncomfortable. It simply was. "I don't need saving," she said after several bites had restored some of her strength. "I didn't offer to save you." His response was immediate, his accent subtle but present. "I offered food and a blanket." Her phone buzzed again, insistent. Matteo's eyes flicked to it, then back to her. "He knows where I usually go," she found herself saying. "Friends, family, work. He'll check them all." Matteo studied her, his expression unreadable. "The establishment has rooms upstairs. Clean, secure. You can stay tonight." Eliza stiffened. "I don't." "You would be alone," he interrupted, his tone making it clear this wasn't negotiable. "The door locks from the inside. The staff is discreet. She should refuse." This man radiated danger, the controlled kind that suggested power accustomed to being obeyed. Yet Daniel's last text, "I know you're hiding somewhere. I'll find you," made the decision for her. "One night," she agreed. Matteo nodded once, then signaled to Marco, who produced a key. "Second floor, end of the hall. The window faces the alley, but the glass is reinforced. No one enters without authorization." As she stood to follow Marco, Matteo added, "If you need anything, dial 0 on the room phone. It connects directly to security." The room was Spartan but elegant. A bed with crisp sheets, a bathroom with expensive toiletries, a window that revealed rain-slicked cobblestones below. The lock engaged with a solid click that sounded like temporary safety. Eliza stood under the shower until the hot water began to cool, watching the day wash down the drain. Her wrist throbbed where Daniel had gripped it, his voice echoing. "You think you can just leave?" She'd thought exactly that. packing a small bag while he was at work, planning to stay with her sister in Boston. But he'd come home early, caught her, and the careful exit strategy had dissolved into a desperate escape through the kitchen door, while he shouted promises that slid from apology to threat. Now she was here, in a stranger's domain, trading one danger for another. Her phone battery died at 3 a.m. In the sudden darkness, Eliza felt something unexpected. Relief. The torrent of messages had stopped. For the first time in months, she slept without waiting for the sound of angry footsteps. Morning arrived with a soft knock on the floor outside her door. Fresh clothes that somehow fit, a charged portable battery for her phone, and a note in precise handwriting. Coffee downstairs when you're ready. Mem. Eliza descended the stairs at precisely 9:17 a.m., wearing the clothes left at her door, simple black slacks and a cream blouse that felt like silk against her skin. The bar had transformed in daylight, its evening mystique replaced by an efficient business operation. Staff moved purposefully, preparing for the day, barely glancing her way. Matteo sat at the same table as last night, a newspaper folded beside him, 2 coffee cups on the polished surface. His attention shifted to her immediately. A subtle assessment that missed nothing. "You slept," he observed as she approached. "Yes." She took the seat across from him, maintaining distance. "Thank you for the clothes." "Necessity, not charity." He pushed a cup toward her. "Black, unless you prefer otherwise." The coffee was exceptional, rich and complex. Eliza wrapped her fingers around the warmth, studying him openly now. In daylight, Matteo Ricci was even more striking. Dark hair with threads of silver at the temples, olive skin, features that spoke of discipline and command. But it was his eyes that held her attention, calculating, yes, but with an unexpected depth. "Your phone is charging in my office," he said. "Once it's on, he'll track it." Eliza stiffened. "How do you?" "Men like him follow patterns." Matteo's voice remained level. "Find you, apologize, promise change, then return to form. The technology just makes the cycle faster." She wanted to deny it, to defend her choices, but exhaustion won out. "Yes." "He's already filed a missing persons report," Matteo continued, sliding his phone across the table. On the screen was a local news article. "Local teacher missing. Boyfriend concerned." The photo was from last Christmas, her smiling beside Daniel, his arm around her waist. The image made her stomach turn. The article quoted him calling her emotionally fragile and possibly confused. "He's laying groundwork," she whispered. "Yes." Matteo took back his phone, making himself the concerned partner. "You the unstable one." Standard tactic. "How do you know all this?" Something shifted in his expression. A calculation. A decision. "I know patterns of control. I know how men think when they believe they own something." The implication hung between them. Eliza should have been terrified, but instead felt a strange, sharp clarity. "You're not just a bar owner." No elaboration, no defense. She should leave, now. Instead she asked, "Why help me?" Matteo considered her question with unexpected seriousness. "Because you ran into my establishment. Because you needed sanctuary. Because men who hurt women offend me." A pause. "Take your pick. And what do you want in return?" "Nothing." Eliza laughed, a harsh sound. "Everyone wants something." "True." He leaned forward slightly. "But not always immediately. Not always from you." Before she could respond, a man in a suit approached their table. He bent to whisper something in Matteo's ear, then retreated with a nod to Eliza. "Your ex-boyfriend is canvassing the neighborhood," Matteo informed her. "He's showing your picture to businesses 2 blocks east." Fear crawled up her spine. "I should go." "Where?" The question wasn't cruel, just pragmatic. Eliza had no answer. Her sister was overseas. Her friends were mutual friends with Daniel. Her savings wouldn't last a week in a hotel. "Stay," Matteo said, reading her silence. "I have an apartment in the building. More comfortable than the room upstairs. No one will find you there." "Why would you do that?" "Because I can." He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with a practiced motion. "And because it offends me that he thinks he can hunt you in my territory." Territory. The word should have alarmed her. Instead, it offered a strange comfort, the idea of boundaries that Daniel couldn't cross. "I'll need my phone," she said, making her decision. "Of course. But first, let me show you something." He led her through a door behind the bar, down a hallway. and into an office. One wall was lined with security monitors showing different angles of the street. The bar, the entrances. Camera 7, he instructed, pointing to a screen. There was Daniel showing her picture to a shopkeeper across the street. His face was composed, concerned, the perfect worried boyfriend. But Eliza saw what others wouldn't. The tight line of his jaw, the controlled movements that preceded his worst moments. He'll work his way here eventually, Matteo said. When he does, my staff will say they've never seen you. And if he doesn't believe them, then he'll learn about boundaries. The calm way he said, it sent a chill through her. I don't want violence, she said quickly. Matteo studied her. Interesting, after what he did to you. Eliza unconsciously touched her wrist. Violence doesn't fix violence. Sometimes it's the only language understood, but he nodded. However, I respect your position. No permanent harm will come to him. It was strange, this negotiation of terms. Stranger still was the way he seemed to genuinely consider her wishes. When her boundaries had meant nothing to Daniel for months. 2 days, she decided. I'll stay 2 days while I figure out what to do next. As you wish. He gestured toward another door. The apartment is through there. You'll find everything you need. As she moved past him, Eliza caught a glimpse of something unexpected in his eyes. Not desire or calculation, but a quiet understanding that felt more dangerous than either. 3 days became a week. Eliza's careful timeline dissolved as Daniel's search intensified. He appeared on local news, voice breaking as he described his increasingly concerned state. He enlisted friends to form search parties. He left voicemails that oscillated between pleading and veiled threats. She watched it all unfold from the cocoon of Matteo's apartment, a space that reflected its owner in its elegant restraint and attention to detail. Nothing excessive, everything of quality. The bookshelves held volumes in multiple languages. The kitchen was equipped for someone who appreciated food, but rarely cooked. The guest room where she slept was comfortable, but impersonal. Matteo himself was rarely there. He appeared in the mornings, bringing coffee and news. Sometimes he returned in the evenings, working quietly at his desk while she read books from his collection. They developed an unspoken rhythm, existing in parallel without interference, until the night she found the gun. She hadn't meant to snoop. She'd been looking for a pen in his desk drawer when her fingers brushed against cold metal. The sleek black handgun was nestled beside neatly organized papers, permits. She noted with surprise. Legal. It's registered. Eliza startled. Matteo stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. I wasn't. You were curious. It's natural. He crossed to the desk, closing the drawer with a gentle push. You've been living in a stranger's home. You should have questions. Do you have answers? She asked, finding her courage. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. That depends on the questions. Who are you? Really? He gestured to the living room. Sit. This conversation requires space. They sat across from each other, the coffee table between them, like neutral territory. Outside, rain began to fall again, drumming against the windows. I manage certain business interests in this city, Matteo began, his words precise. Import, export, property, investment. Some enterprises that operate in gray areas of legality. You're in the Mafia, Eliza translated. A slight smile. An oversimplification, but not entirely incorrect. I prefer to think of it as an alternative governance structure. You're a criminal, by some definitions. He seemed unbothered by the label. By others, I'm a businessman who provides services the conventional market cannot. Protection rackets, drugs. I don't traffic humans. I don't sell to children. I don't engage in random violence. His eyes held hers. Does that make it better or worse in your moral calculus? The question wasn't rhetorical. He genuinely seemed interested in her answer. I don't know, she admitted. I don't have enough information to judge. Few do. He leaned back slightly. The world isn't as binary as we're taught. There are many shades between legal and just. Eliza thought of the police, who had dismissed her concerns about Daniel months ago, of the system that would view her as the unstable one now. Why tell me this, she asked. I could go to the authorities. You could, he agreed. But you won't, because you'd stop me. Because you're intelligent enough to recognize that would endanger you more than me. He tilted his head slightly. And because I've shown you nothing but respect since you arrived. It was true. In the week she'd stayed here, she'd never once felt threatened by him. Unsettled, yes. Aware of his power, certainly, but never unsafe. I want honesty between us, he continued. If you're to remain here, you should know whose protection you're accepting, and if I want to leave. The door has never been locked. He gestured toward it. But consider what waits outside. Daniel's face on the news flashed in her mind. The search parties, the police reports. I need time to think, she said finally. Matteo nodded once. Of course, but while you consider, know this. I have never lied to you. I never will. That is my offer, truth and safety, for as long as you need them. In exchange for what? Nothing you don't choose to give. He stood, straightening his cuffs. I have meetings this evening. There's food in the refrigerator. The security team is downstairs if you need anything. He moved toward the door, then paused. Eliza, whatever you decide, remember that leaving one cage for another is not freedom. After he left, she sat motionless, weighing impossible choices. Outside her window, the city lights blurred in the rain. Freedom and danger, indistinguishable in the gathering darkness. Later, when Matteo returned, he found her still awake, a decision formed in the quiet hours alone. I'll stay, she said, but on one condition. Complete honesty when it affects me. No secrets that put me at risk. Agreed. He extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. Their first deliberate contact. A contract more binding than paper. The morning news showed Daniel outside the police station. His expression a perfect mask of concern. I just want to know she's safe, he told reporters, his voice breaking at the precisely right moment. Eliza, if you're watching this, please come home. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it together. Eliza muted the television, her stomach turning. Beside her on the couch, Matteo watched with clinical detachment. He's good, he observed, the tremor in his voice. The way he looks down before mentioning your name, practiced. He used to rehearse arguments, Eliza said quietly. What he'd say if I brought up certain topics. I'd hear him in the shower sometimes, perfecting his responses. Matteo's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at her. He's hired a private investigator, former police, detective, with connections in the department. How do you know that? I have people in places that provide information. He set his phone down. This complicates matters. The PI will be more thorough than the police. Fear crept up her spine. What do we do? The we slipped out naturally, and Matteo noted it with a slight tilt of his head. We counter with information of our own. He crossed to his desk and returned with a slim laptop. What do you know about his finances? Not much. He handled the money. Eliza frowned. He always said I wasn't good with numbers. A convenient belief for him. Matteo opened the laptop. Did he have gambling debts? Drug habits? Expensive tastes? No, he was careful with money. Obsessive about saving. She paused. Except for his watches. He collected them. Spent thousands sometimes. Interesting. Matteo made a note. What about work? Any conflicts, ethical issues? He's an investment advisor. He always said his clients loved him. All of them. Eliza thought back. There was one couple, the Hendersons. They threatened to sue him last year. Something about mismanaged funds. It disappeared quickly. Very interesting. Matteo typed something else. And your joint accounts? We didn't have any. He said it was better to keep finances separate until we were married. Matteo's expression darkened slightly. Of course he did. Over the next hours, they constructed a detailed map of Daniel's life. His clients, his habits, his vulnerabilities. Matteo made calls, speaking in coded language that Eliza began to decipher. Resources being deployed, information channels activated. You're not going to hurt him, she reminded him. A statement rather than a question, as we agreed. Matteo set down his phone. But there are many ways to apply pressure without physical harm. By evening, the first results arrived. Matteo's associate, a woman named Sophia, with sharp eyes and sharper wit, brought files that spread across the dining table. The Hendersons weren't the only ones, Sophia explained, pointing to documents. 3 other clients filed complaints that never made it to formal investigations, all withdrawn suddenly. He paid them off? Eliza asked. No, Matteo said, studying the papers. He threatened them. Look at the timing. Each complaint withdrawn after personal meetings. No settlement paperwork. And this, Sophia continued, sliding forward another document. The watch collection is insured for $320,000, but his reported income couldn't support acquisitions of that value. Money laundering, Matteo suggested. Or simple fraud, Sophia replied. Either way, it's leverage. Eliza stared at the papers, seeing Daniel's carefully constructed life unravel. The man who had controlled her finances, who had made her doubt her own competence, had built his success on deception. What happens now? She asked. Now we wait, Matteo said. Information is only valuable when applied at the right moment. That moment came 3 days later. Daniel appeared on television again, this time announcing a reward for information about Eliza's whereabouts. I fear she may be in danger, he told reporters, his voice thick with manufactured emotion. Within hours, an envelope was delivered to Daniel's office. Its contents: copies of client complaints, watch appraisals alongside income statements, and a simple note: end the search or face exposure. Eliza watched the surveillance footage from Matteo's security room as Daniel received the envelope, his face transforming from confusion to rage to fear in seconds. Will it work? She asked. Men like him value their reputation above all else, Matteo replied. The threat of public humiliation is more effective than physical intimidation. He was right. That evening, Daniel issued a statement respecting Eliza's privacy and hoping for her safe return when she's ready. The search parties disbanded. The police investigation cooled. In the quiet aftermath, Eliza stood at the apartment window, watching the city lights emerge in the dusk. Thank you, she said when Matteo joined her, for helping me fight back without becoming like him. You did most of the work, he corrected her. You provided the information. You chose the approach. But you made it possible. Matteo stood beside her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel his presence. Perhaps we made it possible together. In that moment, something shifted between them. Trust crystallizing into something deeper, more dangerous. Not quite love, not yet, but the foundation for it, built on respect rather than control, on truth rather than fear. The call came at 2:17 a.m., jerking Eliza from sleep. She heard Matteo's voice in the living room, terse and commanding in rapid Italian. Something was wrong. She found him fully dressed minutes later, sliding his phone into his pocket with controlled precision. What's happened? She asked, pulling her robe tighter. Business matter. His tone was neutral, but his eyes were sharp with tension. Nothing that concerns you. You promised honesty. Matteo paused, reassessing. There's been an incident at one of my warehouses, a territorial dispute with a rival organization. People are hurt. Yes. No elaboration, no excuse. Are you going there? I must. He checked his watch. The security team will remain in the building. Stay in the apartment. Lock the door. Be careful, she said, surprising herself with the depth of concern in her voice. Something flickered across his face. Surprise. Perhaps gratitude. He nodded once and was gone. Eliza tried to return to sleep, but found herself instead at the window, watching the empty street below. 3 hours passed. Dawn approached. Her worry grew with each passing minute. The apartment phone rang, startling her. It was Sophia, her usual composure fractured. Is he with you? She demanded without greeting. No, he left hours ago. What's wrong? The meeting was compromised. There was an ambush. Sophia's voice tightened. He's not answering his phone. Where is he? Eliza was already moving, pulling clothes from the closet. We're tracking his car to the East Side Warehouse District. I'm sending security to you. Give me the address. Absolutely not. Matteo would. Matteo isn't here to object, Eliza interrupted. The address, Sophia. Now. Perhaps it was the authority in her voice, so like Matteo's own, that convinced her. After a moment, Sophia relented. 20 minutes later, a sleek black car deposited Eliza outside an industrial building, its windows dark. The driver, a stone-faced man named Vincent, protested when she insisted on entering. Mr. Ricci would have my head, he argued. Then blame me entirely, she replied, already moving toward the door. Inside, the warehouse was cavernous and eerily silent. Emergency lights cast long shadows across concrete floors. Evidence of violence was everywhere. Overturned furniture, scattered papers, dark stains that Eliza refused to examine too closely. "Matteo," she called, her voice echoing. A noise from a back office drew her attention. She found him there, alone, his suit jacket discarded, white shirt stained with blood, as he attempted to bandage a wound on his arm. He looked up, expression shifting from pain to disbelief to anger. "What are you doing here?" Sophia called. "You weren't answering your phone." Eliza moved forward, assessing the injury. "You need a hospital." "No hospitals." His voice was firm, despite his pallor. "Gunshot wounds require police reports. Then you need proper first aid." She took the gauze from his unresisting hands. "Sit down before you fall down." To her surprise, he complied, sinking into a chair. The wound was a deep graze along his upper arm, bleeding steadily, but not catastrophically. "Medical kit in the cabinet," he directed, watching as she retrieved it. Eliza worked methodically, cleaning the wound with antiseptic that made him inhale sharply, applying pressure, then bandaging with practiced movements. "You've done this before," he observed. "I taught elementary school," she replied, focusing on her task. "Playground injuries are surprisingly good training." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, then faded. "You shouldn't be here. It's not safe." "Neither should you, apparently." She secured the bandage. "What happened?" "Betrayal." The word held layers of meaning. "Someone gave information to rivals about tonight's meeting. Your men. 2 injured, none killed. The others are securing our other locations." He flexed his arm cautiously. The rival faction suffered worse. Eliza sat back, suddenly aware of the intimacy of their position, her hands still resting lightly on his arm. "I was worried," she admitted. Matteo studied her, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. "You came into a potentially dangerous situation." "For me?" "Yes. Why?" The question hung between them, demanding truth. Eliza found she had only one answer. "Because you would have done the same for me." Something shifted in his gaze, recognition, perhaps even vulnerability. For a moment, the careful distance between them disappeared. Then his phone rang, shattering the moment. He answered, his voice returning to its commanding tone as he issued directives in Italian. When he finished the call, he stood, testing his balance. "We need to leave. My men will handle the cleanup." Outside, dawn had broken, casting pale light over the industrial landscape. Vincent waited with the car, relief evident when he saw Matteo walking under his own power. In the back seat, Eliza felt the adrenaline drain from her body, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Beside her, Matteo sat straight despite his injury, his profile sharp against the window. "Thank you," he said quietly as they approached the city, "for coming, for helping." "It wasn't a choice," she replied honestly. He turned to look at her then, his expression more open than she'd ever seen it. That's what makes it significant. Back at the apartment, Sophia waited, her relief at seeing Matteo quickly replaced by efficient action, fresh bandages, medication, security updates. Through it all, Matteo's eyes repeatedly found Eliza's, something unspoken passing between them. Later, as morning fully arrived, Eliza brought him tea, finding him at his desk, despite Sophia's instructions to rest. "You should sleep," she admonished. "So should you." He accepted the tea, his fingers brushing hers. "Yet here we both are." The touch lingered, deliberate this time. Neither of them pulled away. "What happens now?" she asked, meaning far more than the immediate future. "Now," Matteo said, his voice low and certain, "everything changes." A month after the warehouse incident, Eliza stood among stacks of books, inhaling the comforting scent of paper and possibility. The small bookstore had been vacant for years, tucked between a cafe and a vintage clothing shop in a neighborhood just beginning to revitalize. "What do you think?" Matteo asked, watching her explore the space. "It's perfect," she breathed, running her fingers along dusty shelves. "But why show me this?" "Because it's yours." He handed her a folder. "The deed, business license, startup capital, all in your name alone." Eliza stared at the documents, then at him. "I don't understand." "You mentioned teaching was your passion, but schools have become complicated given your situation." His expression remained neutral, but his eyes were warm. "Books are the next best thing, yes. A place of learning, of escape. You bought me a bookstore." The magnitude of the gesture overwhelmed her. "I acquired a property." What you make of it is entirely your decision. He moved to the window, looking out at the street. You've been in my world too long. You need something of your own. In the weeks since she'd bandaged his wound, their relationship had evolved into something neither of them named. They shared meals, conversations that stretched into the night, a growing awareness of each other that remained largely unacknowledged. He never pressed for more. She never offered. The tension between them built like a slow-burning fuse. I can't accept this, she said, though her fingers tightened on the folder. You can. Matteo turned back to her. Consider it investment in your independence. Is that what you want? For me to be independent from you? Something flickered in his expression. Vulnerability quickly masked. I want you to stay because you choose to, not because you have nowhere else to go. The truth of it struck her deeply. He was offering her freedom, knowing it might lead her away from him. Thank you, she said finally, accepting both the gift and its implications. Over the following weeks, the bookstore transformed under Eliza's direction. She named it Refuge, an acknowledgement of its significance in her journey. Matteo provided resources, but never interfered with her decisions. The space became truly hers, warm, inviting, filled with carefully curated volumes and comfortable reading nooks. On opening day, Matteo arrived with a single perfect orchid for the counter. He stayed in the background as customers explored, his presence protective, but unobtrusive. You've created something beautiful, he told her when the last customer had left. I had help, she acknowledged. No, his voice was firm. This is yours, your vision, your execution. That night he took her to dinner at a small restaurant where the owner greeted him with respectful familiarity. Over candlelight, they discussed books, business, the future. Everything except the growing tension between them, until Matteo set a small velvet box beside her dessert plate. Eliza's heart stuttered. Matteo, it's not what you think, he interrupted gently. Open it. Inside was not a ring but a key, attached to a delicate silver chain. What is this? A cottage on the coast, an hour from the city. He met her gaze steadily. Also in your name alone. A place no one, including me, can enter without your permission. Eliza stared at the key, understanding its significance. Another escape. Another choice, he corrected. The bookstore gives you purpose in the city. The cottage gives you sanctuary away from it. Both are yours unconditionally. Why? The question was barely audible. Matteo was silent for a long moment, choosing his words with unusual care. Because true power is having options. Because what exists between us should never become a cage. He paused. Because I have come to care for you in ways that frighten me. It was the most direct acknowledgement either had made of their feelings. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. You're giving me the means to leave you, she observed. I'm giving you the freedom to stay. His eyes never left hers. There's a difference. Later that night, standing in his apartment, their apartment as it had somehow become, Eliza made a decision. She moved toward him, closing the careful distance they'd maintained for months. Thank you, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, for understanding what freedom means to me. Always. His voice was low, controlled. She reached up, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw, their first truly intimate touch. He remained perfectly still, allowing her to set the pace, the boundaries. I choose to stay, she whispered. Not because I need to, because I want to. The kiss that followed was inevitable. A culmination of months of restrained desire. His hands found her waist, steady and certain. Hers slid to his shoulders, feeling the strength there. The contained power now focused entirely on her. When they separated, his eyes had darkened, but his control remained intact. Are you certain? In answer, she took his hand and led him toward the bedroom that had been his alone until now. Hours later, lying in the darkness with his arm curved protectively around her, Eliza realized something profound. With Daniel, she had always felt diminished, smaller, weaker, less capable. With Matteo, despite the obvious disparity in their power, she felt expanded, stronger, more certain, more herself. What are you thinking? He asked, his voice rough with rare vulnerability. She traced the scar on his arm, where she had bandaged him. That power and control aren't the same thing. He turned to face her, his expression serious in the dim light. No, they're not. Control is about limitation. Power is about possibility. You have both, she observed. As do you now. His fingers intertwined with hers. Perhaps that's why we fit. It wasn't a declaration of love. They were both too cautious for that yet. But it was an acknowledgement of something equally profound. A balance found. A choice made. A future possible. The final confrontation came on an ordinary Tuesday, 6 months after Eliza had first stumbled into Obsidian. She was arranging a new display of children's books when the bell above the door chimed. Looking up, she froze. Daniel stood in the entrance, his expression a careful mask of concern that didn't reach his eyes. "Eliza," he said, his voice soft with practiced emotion. "I've been so worried." She straightened, fear fluttering in her chest but not overwhelming her. "How did you find me?" "Does it matter?" He stepped further into the store, glancing around with calculated casualness. "I've been looking for you for months. The police were useless. I had to hire private investigators." Eliza moved behind the counter, putting solid oak between them. Her hand found her phone in her pocket, pressing the emergency contact she'd programmed months ago. "You need to leave," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "After all this time searching for you." He gave a hurt laugh. "I just want to talk, to understand why you ran." "You know why?" His expression hardened slightly before he controlled it. "I know we had problems. All couples do. But disappearing like that, letting me think you were hurt or dead, that was cruel, Eliza." The familiar pattern emerged, the subtle accusation, the redirection of blame. Once it would have worked. She would have doubted herself, apologized, tried to make him understand. Now she simply said, "Please leave my store." "Your store?" His eyebrows rose. "How does a school teacher afford a bookshop in this neighborhood?" His gaze sharpened. "Unless someone's helping you, someone with resources." The implication hung in the air. Before she could respond, the door opened again. Matteo entered, his presence immediately filling the space. He wore no visible weapon, but his power was palpable. Daniel turned, assessing the newcomer with instant dislike. "Who are you?" "The owner of this building," Matteo replied, his voice pleasant but carrying unmistakable authority. "And you're trespassing." "I'm having a conversation with my girlfriend." "Ex-girlfriend," Eliza corrected firmly, "and I've asked you to leave." Daniel's facade cracked slightly, anger flashing in his eyes. "So this is who you left me for? Some rich guy who bought you a store?" "You should consider your next words very carefully," Matteo advised, his tone unchanged, but something dangerous entering his posture. Eliza moved from behind the counter, standing beside Matteo, but addressing Daniel directly. "I left because you controlled every aspect of my life, because you made me doubt my own mind, because the bruises on my wrist that night weren't the first. And they wouldn't have been the last." Daniel's expression twisted. "That's not true. You're exaggerating again, being dramatic." "Enough." Matteo's single word cut through the space like a blade. "You have two choices. Leave now and never contact Eliza again, or face consequences you cannot imagine." For a moment, Daniel seemed ready to escalate, his body tensing. Then his gaze shifted to the street outside, where two of Matteo's security team had appeared, watching through the window. "This isn't over," he said to Eliza, but the threat sounded hollow even to his own ears. "It is," she replied with quiet certainty. "It has been for months. I've moved forward. You should too." Something in her calm confidence seemed to finally reach him. He looked between her and Matteo, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You really aren't coming back," he said. And for the first time, there was genuine realization in his voice. "No, I'm not." He left without another word, shoulders rigid with wounded pride. Through the window, they watched as he walked away, Matteo's security team following at a discreet distance to ensure he truly left. When he was gone, Eliza released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thank you," she said, turning to Matteo. "For what?" he asked, studying her with concern. "I did nothing. You faced him. You spoke your truth. For being here, for not," she hesitated, "for not hurting him. You asked me not to." His answer was simple, but the commitment behind it was profound. "Are you all right?" Yes, she realized with surprise that it was true. "I am." That evening, as they sat on the balcony of their apartment watching the city lights emerge, Matteo seemed unusually contemplative. "What are you thinking?" Eliza asked, her hand finding his. "That you showed more strength today than most of my men ever have." He turned to face her. "You had the power to destroy him. The evidence of his financial misconduct alone would have ended his career. Yet you chose mercy." "Not mercy," she corrected. "Freedom. Revenge would have kept him in my life, in my thoughts." Matteo considered this. Perhaps there's wisdom in that approach. 2 weeks later, he surprised her with an unexpected proposal. They were visiting the children's wing of the hospital, where Refuge donated books monthly, when he paused before a particular room. Inside, a small girl sat alone, her arm in a cast, her face bruised. "Her name is Sophia," he said quietly. "Her mother died last year. Her father is in prison for what he did to her." Eliza's heart constricted. "What will happen to her?" "Foster care, most likely." He watched the child through the window. "Unless someone offers an alternative." Understanding dawned slowly. "Matteo, are you suggesting that we could give her a home?" "Yes." His expression was more vulnerable than she'd ever seen it. "I have resources, influence. You have compassion, experience with children. Together, perhaps we could offer her something better." The proposal was unexpected, yet somehow inevitable. A culmination of their journey together. A child born of violence, offered safety and love instead. "It won't be easy," she cautioned. "Your world, your business can change," he finished. "Has been changing since you entered it." It was true. In recent months, he had been redirecting his enterprises toward legitimate businesses, distancing himself from the more dangerous elements of his past. "We would need to be married," she noted practically. "For the adoption?" He smiled slightly. "Is that a proposal, Eliza?" "A practical observation," she replied, but her eyes were warm. "Then allow me to make an equally practical observation." He took her hand. "I love you. I want to build a life with you, one that includes this child, if you're willing. One that continues our journey towards something better than what we were alone." It wasn't a traditional proposal, but nothing about their relationship had been traditional. The truth of his words, the commitment behind them, meant more than any grand gesture could have. "Yes," she said simply, "to all of it." 6 months later, they stood in the cottage by the sea, her sanctuary that had become their family retreat. Little Sophia played on the beach below, watched over by Matteo's most trusted security man, now her devoted bodyguard. "Are you happy?" Matteo asked, his arm around Eliza's waist as they watched their daughter from the deck. "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "Are you?" He considered the question with characteristic thoughtfulness. "I spent my life building power to ensure I was never vulnerable. Now I find strength in the vulnerability of loving you both." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "So yes, I'm extraordinarily happy." Below them, Sophia looked up and waved. They waved back, united in the simple gesture. They had both come from darkness, different kinds, but darkness nonetheless. Together, they had found their way into light.